There comes a point in every man's life when he realizes that not all help is helpful, and not everyone deserves to be saved. You've likely spent years giving your time, advice, and energy to others, sometimes out of duty, other times out of empathy. But as life teaches us, there's a fine line between being supportive and being used. You start to notice the pattern. Some people don't want solutions. They want attention, or worse, dependence. Others take your support for granted, never growing, never changing, just coming back for more. You give, they take, and nothing improves. This is where the ancient wisdom of Stoicism offers clarity. It doesn't say, don't help. It says, help wisely. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus all spoke of discernment, of knowing where to place your limited time, strength, and care. They understood that life is a battlefield, and you can't carry the wounded who refuse to stand. Today's video explores 8 types of people you should be cautious about helping. This isn't about turning your back on others. It's about protecting your sanity, preserving your energy, and living with purpose. If you've ever felt drained from being the dependable one, the fixer, the go-to, this is your wake-up call. Let's take a closer look at the people who might be silently sabotaging your strength. Number 1. The ungrateful gratitude isn't just about manners. It's a mirror of character. For a man who's given decades to building, providing, and supporting others, few things cut deeper than being taken for granted. And yet, many of us have stood in that place, offering a hand, a favor, or even a second chance, only to be met with silence, indifference, or worse, entitlement. Stoic philosophy doesn't tell us to turn cold. It tells us to turn wise. The Stoics understood that true strength isn't in how much you give, but in knowing where and when to give it. A man must protect not just his wealth or time, but his inner reserves, his spirit, his purpose, his clarity. Ungrateful people are not just forgetful, they're corrosive. They chip away at your willingness to give. They mistake your generosity for duty. And in doing so, they rob you of one of life's rarest qualities, the quiet dignity of being appreciated. History and tradition have long honored gratitude as a foundation of human decency, not as a transaction, but as a sign of awareness. When someone can't even acknowledge a sacrifice made on their behalf, they're not just being rude. They're showing you they'll never grow, that they expect the world to carry them while they stand still. You've likely seen it in your own life. The colleague who constantly leans on you but never says thank you, or the family member who calls only when they need something, never to check in, never to give back. Every time you help them, you're investing in a dead end. There comes a point in every man's life when he must stop mistaking endless giving for moral virtue. Helping someone who refuses to learn, to improve, or even to acknowledge your role in their life isn't compassion. It's self-neglect. A Stoic man helps where his help matters. He gives where the soil is fertile. He doesn't pour his strength into broken vessels or into hands that will never grasp the meaning behind the gesture. And neither should you. Number 2. People who don't value your time. There comes a stage in a man's life when he begins to realize that his most limited possession is not money, strength, or even opportunity. It's time. Not just in the abstract sense, but in the daily, hour-by-hour rhythm of existence. And the older we get, the more clearly we see that the greatest threat to our time isn't always hardship. It's interruption. Some people move through life as if other people's time is theirs to take. They arrive unannounced, overstay without thought, and speak without purpose. They don't mean harm, perhaps, but their presence is quietly corrosive. What they demand isn't your advice or support. They demand your minutes, your focus, your attention, and they never think to give it back. Stoic thinking teaches us this truth with sharp clarity. If you don't protect your time, someone else will spend it for you. Not out of malice, but because they never learn to respect what they don't have to earn. And if you continue to make yourself constantly available, answering every call, sitting through every pointless conversation, attending every unimportant meeting, you become a participant in your own neglect. Marcus Aurelius didn't deal with smartphones or office chatter, but his insight was timeless. Don't waste time wondering what a good man should be. Just be one. And being one means knowing what matters and guarding it with discipline. There is nothing selfish about being unavailable to chaos. There is nothing unkind about closing the door when your focus is needed elsewhere. A man's time is not a public utility. It's a private treasury. If you treat it like it's infinite, others will too, and they'll spend it as carelessly as they live their own lives. Think about it. How many moments have you given away to people who never truly needed your help, only your attention? How many times has your evening, your clarity, your rest been sacrificed to someone else's lack of foresight or self-discipline? The solution isn't hostility, it's boundaries, strong ones, not explained or defended, but lived. When you begin to value your time, others will learn to do the same. Or they will move on to someone else who hasn't yet learned this lesson. As Seneca warned, it's not that life is short, it's that we waste much of it. And nothing is more wasteful than giving time to those who don't value it, who don't grow from it, who don't return it with appreciation or respect. The man who owns his time owns his life. The man who gives it away too freely never truly lives it. Number 3, the manipulators. There are people who don't simply take your time. They consume your strength. Not with force, but with neediness disguised as closeness. You try to be the good man, the dependable one, the one who shows up. And yet, after every conversation, every favor, every quick call, you walk away feeling hollow. This isn't friendship. It's not support. It's emotional manipulation, the quiet erosion of your energy by someone who masks self-interest as vulnerability. By midlife, a man has learned the hard way that not all connections are healthy. Some are built on guilt, not respect. These people are not looking to grow. They're looking for someone to carry the weight of their chaos. They don't want advice. They want a permanent audience for their drama. You may recognize them. Always overwhelmed, yet never changing. Always in a crisis, yet never seeking real solutions. You become their outlet, their counselor, their emotional crutch. And in the process, you sacrifice your peace, your time, and your clarity. A Stoic understands that a good life isn't lived by endlessly giving. It's lived by giving wisely. Not every outstretched hand deserves a response. Not every story requires your attention. Real support is mutual. It strengthens both sides. But when someone leaves you drained again and again, that's not support. It's dependency. And if you allow it to continue, you become complicit in their refusal to grow. This isn't about shutting people out. It's about understanding your role and knowing when that role has been twisted into something you never signed up for. Marcus Aurelius reminded us to be the master of our own mind, to guard it from needless suffering. Letting someone else turn your emotional landscape into their playground is the very suffering he warned us against. When guilt becomes the primary tool they use to keep you close, you're no longer helping. You're being held hostage. So what's the answer? Set limits. Quietly. Firmly. Not as an act of defiance, but of self-respect. Not everyone is entitled to your ear, your attention, or your loyalty. You've earned your peace through years of effort. Don't give it away to someone who treats it like background noise for their chaos. Seneca said that true freedom begins when we stop letting others dictate how we feel. That freedom begins with saying no, not out of cruelty, but out of wisdom. You are not here to save everyone. You are here to live a life of integrity, of clarity, of calm strength. When you protect your energy, you don't become cold. You become clear. And that clarity, that's where peace lives. Number 4, the irresponsible responsibility is not a detail in a man's life. It's the framework that holds it together. When a man accepts the weight of his choices, he becomes steady, reliable, and respected. But when responsibility is rejected, chaos steps in, not just for him, but for everyone around him. You've likely seen this in action. A man makes a careless decision. He gambles, he lies, he avoids. And when the consequences come knocking, he disappears. Instead of learning, he deflects. Instead of owning up, he leans on others. And someone else is left to clean the mess he refuses to face. Stoicism doesn't speak with anger about men like this. It simply warns us, don't waste your strength where it does no good. Your time, your energy, your discipline, these are finite. Give them where they have impact. Helping a man who refuses to own his life is like pouring clean water into a broken vessel. The effort vanishes, and nothing is built. Responsibility is the quiet contract every man signs with the world. The promise that he will carry what is his and not push it onto others. Those who break that contract often become a burden. They disguise their failures as accidents. They expect forgiveness without change. And over time, they drain the energy of everyone who tries to help them. In leadership, this is especially destructive. A boss who won't admit fault poisons the air for his entire team. His silence breeds confusion. His denial kills morale. Leadership isn't about being right. It's about standing tall when you're wrong and setting the tone for how failure is handled. Without that, no one trusts the direction being given. Even in the home, irresponsibility damages the foundation. A brother, a son, a partner who refuses to be accountable doesn't just risk his own future. He weakens the family structure that holds others together. And the more you protect him from consequences, the more fragile that structure becomes. Stoic philosophy teaches not to close our hands, but to open our eyes. Help is not a virtue when it reinforces failure. Compassion, when placed in the wrong hands, becomes fuel for further collapse. There's a point where stepping in is no longer kindness. It's self-betrayal. To walk the Stoic path is to choose clarity over comfort. It means understanding that not every cry for help should be answered. Some are meant to be faced alone. Growth often requires struggle, and rescuing a man too early robs him of the very pain that could have built his strength. If you find yourself always repairing what another man keeps breaking, it's time to pause. Ask yourself, am I helping him grow or just keeping him from the lesson? You're not abandoning him by stepping back. You're giving him the chance to rise or fall on his own merit. And that's the truth no one wants to admit. Not everyone is ready for the help they ask for. Sometimes the greatest act of respect you can give another man is to let him stand or stumble without interference. Your strength is meant to be invested, not drained. Save it for those who meet life with open eyes and willing hands. Number 5. The victim. There's a type of man who's easy to recognize once you've lived long enough. He's not dangerous in the way we usually define it. He doesn't shout, or rage, or control. Instead, he drains. Quietly, slowly. He blames. He points outward. Life has been unkind, he says. The world is unfair. Nothing ever works out. At first, you might feel compassion. You've known hardship too. So you offer support, advice, time, patience. But what you discover, over time, is that this man doesn't want a way out. He wants witnesses. His struggle has become his identity, and your attention is the fuel that keeps his narrative alive. This is not the man who fell and got back up. This is the man who refuses to rise, because standing would mean taking responsibility for where he is. Stoic philosophy draws a hard but necessary line here. It teaches that strength is found not in how much we suffer, but in how we respond to it. A man cannot move forward while clinging to the belief that he's always been wronged. That mindset becomes a prison, and he becomes its most loyal guard. When you engage too long with someone like this, you start to feel it. Not just frustration, but fatigue. You give advice that goes unheard. You offer perspective, but it gets twisted into further justification. Everything leads back to the same script. It's not my fault. There is no growth here, only repetition. It's tempting, especially for good men, to try and fix what looks broken. But not everything broken wants to be mended. Some men wrap themselves in failure like armor, because it excuses them from risk, from effort, from change. They don't need a hand. They need a reckoning. And this is where your responsibility ends. You are not here to carry the emotional burdens of men who refuse to stand on their own legs. You're not cruel for walking away. You're clear. There's a difference. The Stoics understood that pity can be just as destructive as neglect, when it feeds weakness instead of calling forth strength. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that our power lies in mastering our inner life, not in controlling others. You can't think for another man. You can't will him into courage. That's his work. Real support begins with truth. And the truth is, no man changes until he stops blaming the world and starts facing himself. You may care, you may hope, but you must not let his self-pity become your problem to solve. There is nothing noble in being a savior to someone who refuses to save himself. Better to stand tall in your own life, clear-eyed, disciplined, at peace, than to sink into another man's refusal to grow. Because in the end, the man who always plays the victim isn't oppressed by fate. He's shackled by choice. Number 6. The chronic critics. Some men don't seek wisdom, they seek targets. They don't speak to offer insight, they speak to undermine. You can show up with your best work, your best effort, even your best self, and still, they'll find a crack to pick at. Not to help you improve, but to feel stronger in the shadow of your strength. You've met these men before. They never build, they only dismantle. Not out loud rage, but quiet erosion, sarcastic remarks, dismissive tone, a habit of always knowing better, while offering nothing of substance themselves. These are not men of principle. They are men of dissatisfaction. The world has disappointed them, and instead of rising to meet it, they aim to lower everything around them. Stoic philosophy calls for clarity, to see things as they are, not how we wish them to be. A man like this is not a mentor. He is not a guide. He is a mirror cracked by his own bitterness, reflecting distortion, not truth. The Stoic doesn't absorb every opinion. He doesn't bend to every critique. He filters. He measures. He asks, is this rooted in wisdom? Or is this the noise of a man at war with himself? True criticism, the kind worth hearing, comes from those who want to see you rise. They speak carefully. They offer structure. Their words hold weight because they've earned the right to give them. But the chronic fault finder? He speaks only to hear himself echo, louder than his own insecurities. You can waste years trying to win over that kind of man, trying to impress, to explain, to adjust. But the truth is, nothing will ever be enough. Because what he's looking for isn't your progress, it's your pause. He wants to slow you down, to neutralize your movement, because he fears what your growth reminds him of. Everything he's refused to become. In the workplace, they wear the mask of leadership, but lead through fear and sarcasm. In friendships, they offer no real support, only correction, dressed in concern. They are clever enough to sound wise, but empty enough to do harm. A Stoic does not engage with this energy. He observes it. Then he moves on. You must ask yourself, am I planting my effort in soil that can bear fruit? Or am I feeding ground that only poisons what I give? Because your energy is not infinite. Your patience, your discipline, your willingness to grow, these are sacred. Don't offer them to men who've long stopped offering anything real in return. And remember, some criticism is not meant to teach you anything. It's meant to unsettle you. That's when you know it's time to walk away. Marcus Aurelius taught us that our inner fortress is ours to maintain. That outside noise only becomes damage when we let it inside. Let the critic stay in his own storm. You've got your own path to walk, one defined not by the weak commentary of lesser men, but by the strength of your own quiet progress. Because real men, men of depth, honor, and clarity, they don't waste time tearing others down. They're too focused on rising, building, and living with purpose. Number 7. The lazy. There's a particular kind of man who chooses comfort over effort. Not because life has broken him, but because he's refused to step into it fully. He waits, complains, stalls. He dreams of change but does nothing to bring it about. And when the world doesn't deliver on promises he never worked for, he points fingers, never at himself. The Stoics had little patience for this type of man, not because they lacked compassion, but because they understood the cost of wasted energy. They knew that time, real time, is not just hours on a clock, but purpose in motion. And when you spend that purpose on someone who refuses to rise, you rob not only yourself, but the dignity of what help is supposed to mean. Laziness is not always obvious. It doesn't always look like someone doing nothing. Often, it wears the mask of helplessness. The man who always has a reason why now isn't the time. The man who's thinking about starting something, but never does. The man who expects support, sympathy, and second chances, yet offers no change in return. You've likely crossed paths with him, maybe even tried to help him. You offered ideas, resources, encouragement. But each time, he returned with more excuses, more inertia, not because he couldn't act, but because inaction became a lifestyle, a way to avoid failure by never attempting anything that required risk. And here's where the hard truth emerges. You can't do the work for another man. You can support him, guide him, even stand by him. But if he won't meet life halfway, you're just dragging dead weight. In families, this man might rely endlessly on relatives for financial support, emotional reassurance, or rescue from the consequences of his own neglect. In the workplace, he lets others carry the load while he floats on minimal effort, protected by the generosity of those who still believe he'll one day step up. But Stoicism draws a line between generosity and self-sacrifice. Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus both remind us, a man must own his choices. No one else can walk his path, shoulder his discipline, or forge his will. If he refuses to act, that's his burden, not yours. It's tempting to keep trying, to believe that one more conversation, one more lifeline, will spark something in him. But there's a point where helping becomes enabling, and enabling becomes betrayal. Not of him, but of your own values. True help is not about doing the work for someone. It's about showing them what's possible and stepping aside until they decide to reach for it themselves. If he won't move, let him sit. Let life teach him what comfort never will, that nothing changes until he does. Your time is not disposable. Your strength is not infinite. And your purpose is not to carry men who refuse to walk. As a Stoic and as a man, your responsibility is to stay in motion, to focus on what you can control, to give when giving brings growth, and to step back when your presence becomes a cushion for someone else's refusal to live. Because some men need a hand. Others need to be left behind until they learn to stand on their own. Number 8, the immutable. Every man, at some point in life, learns this hard truth. Not everyone wants to be helped. Not really. You can offer your time, your wisdom, even your heart. But if a man is determined to remain stuck, to live passively, to make excuses instead of decisions, no amount of support will move him forward. You don't raise a man by dragging him. And you certainly don't lift someone who's grown comfortable being carried. Stoic wisdom teaches us that purpose, not pity, should guide our choices. Compassion without clarity is dangerous. It burns us out and feeds the illusion that effort alone can change someone who won't take the first step. And here's the truth few admit. Not everyone drowning wants to swim. Some have simply made peace with the current. Think of the man who constantly complains about his job, his health, his life, yet does nothing to alter it. You listen again and again. You offer solutions, encouragement, even resources. But nothing changes. Why? Because he's chosen comfort over discomfort, even if that comfort is built on misery. He doesn't want transformation. He wants validation for staying the same. This isn't about judgment. It's about discernment. And for the Stoic man, the one who values time, discipline, and truth, knowing where to invest your energy is vital. Helping someone who won't act is like trying to ignite wet wood. All you get is smoke and frustration. And here's the cost. Every time you offer help to someone unwilling to change, you're not just wasting your time. You're diminishing your focus, your power, your momentum. You're feeding a story that says you are responsible for their lack of action. But you are not. The Stoics remind us to remain grounded in what we can control. That includes our decisions, our reactions, our boundaries. It does not include another man's willingness to grow. You can inspire him. You can guide him. But you cannot do his work. So what do when you meet someone who refuses to move? You let him be. You let him sit with his own choices. You stop trying to build a fire in a man who guards the rain. Sometimes, the most powerful answer is silence. Sometimes, the most generous act is distance. It's easy to think walking away means you don't care. In truth, it often means you care enough not to lie. not to lie to yourself or to them. Because pretending they'll change when they won't isn't kindness. It's complicity. A man over 35 understands that life is no longer about saving everyone. It's about showing up for those who show up for themselves. The rest? Let them find their own way, if and when they choose to. You owe your energy to purpose, not to potential that refuses to act. Save your strength for those who are building, for those who are willing to rise, because those are the men who will meet you with the same fire. And as for the ones still standing still, let them. But don't wait with them. Thank you for watching. If this message resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share your perspective in the comments below. And if you found value in this content, consider subscribing to the channel. There's more to come. Grounded insights, timeless philosophy, and reflections that challenge and strengthen the mind. Until next time, stay focused, stay intentional, and walk your path with purpose.